Oh, you're not started yet?
No.
Oh, welcome. Sorry.
Sorry.
Red wine.
I was making sure,
Freeway.
I was making sure Tracy was on. Okay, cool. We're on that.
Ashmaya, everyone. Wayne has now pushed start. Thank you very much. Welcome to our council meeting in beautiful Maniatoto this morning. Ms. Martin will be leading us in the karakia, please.
Right. Hajia Tarito, Aon Tia Parakiki. Kehea Ti Komako Eko. Kaimai Kaiaho Iaha Jamea Nui. Ihaha Jamea Nui o Te Ao. Aho e ke te batu. Tangata, e tangata hei. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McPherson. Apologies today, we have none. You might note a empty seat, but Councillor Patterson is joining us online. And we can move straight into the public forum, which is wonderful to have some Ranfurly locals here. So Amy, you are up first. Please welcome.
Not sure if this is better than water. Kia ora koutou, ko taranaki toku iwi ko ngā mahanga o Taiari toku hapu o Etahi Takutai toku tipuna. Taranaki is my koro, ngā mahanga o Taiari is my tribe, Etahi Takutai is my ancestor. Etahi and William Geary Sr. settled on the Otago Peninsula and farmed there for many generations. Our whānau have deep connection to Otaka Marae and Tangata. I was born in Oxford, England, while my All Black father was playing for the Harlequins and practicing dentistry at the time. Ko Taiari Plains toku tūranga waiwai, ko Māni atoto e noho ana aho. I have left my footprints on the Taiari Plains. The Māni atoto is where I sit now, forever. Ko Amy Ponce aho. A little bit serendipitous that I'm here. I didn't know this was happening on Friday, so thank you, Tamer, for the invitation. It's very cool to be, I guess, first public speaker at the inaugural council meeting here for the first time in the area. Just a little bit about my whānau and a little bit of history about why I feel like I can sit here. My tāne, Jeff Pont, is also from Mosgiel and is the drilling and cultivation manager at Maniatoto Contracting. Two daughters attended Maniatoto Area School for their first 18 years of education. And while I have the chance, I'd like to publicly say, the less tamariki we send away to boarding school, the stronger our school and community and businesses will be. It's that simple. My father, the late Paul Satsford, would come up in his rugby days, training, stacking bales at McLaren's. Mum has come up and stayed at Stonehenge as a Columba girl and a fellow hockey teammate of Izzy Hoare. Many moons later, and a few trips to Naseby, where I remember riding a snowmobile down Derwent Street, that's how deep the snow was, and a couple of years of Dad practicing in Middlemarch from the school, Dad eventually bought the Art Deco style dental practice on Northland Street in Ranfurly, coming up from Mosgiel every Friday from 1997 until his tragic passing in 2009. My parents had also bought our 1883 mud brick cottage in Kyburn from Eddie and Gay Shea, Irish settlers to the area, to stay over the weekends, which we purchased from Dad's estate and now called our forever home. During my university holidays studying BCom in marketing management and design, I worked at the Naseby Forestry for then Rodex and Aspland contractors to council, picking up rubbish from the gardens around Ranfurly, mowing the park behind the railway station, and weed eating the sheepyards in preparation for the A&P shows. Now I get to sit in the secretary's caravan swinging off a microphone. Upon returning from overseas, I worked for Jane Faulkner out at Clackerburn, weeding her garden, serving busloads of Japanese tourists and waxing seals on her preserves. That was where I first heard our local radio station Classic Gold for the first time. A call of desperation came across the 7:29 AM airwaves that the station was facing closure if they did not find announcers. The radio station led to compere and event coordination roles, Art Deco festivals. I was part of the committee for more than half of its lifetime. Youth musters, 8 annual community cups, comparing cavalcades, hospital fundraisers, rescue helicopter fundraisers. The Deco cable, I forgot to organise someone to pick up the bullshit off the road as they rode down the main street of Ranfurly. Road trips to Canterbury Show, promoting the area with the likes of Graham Duncan, Stu McKnight and King Gillespie from Maniatoto Promotions with the curling rink display. At a time when Central Otago District Council struggled with the concept to even include the word Maniatoto in their branding. Now this name is stronger than ever. Then the rebranding of Classic Gold to better reflect our heritage, with Burn being Scottish for stream, a 48-hour radiothon to purchase our new transmitter, and the addition of a low frequency to cover the Ranfurly township. And in 2008, I was awarded the CODC brand ambassador for using the World of Difference branding as much as we did. That year, also members of the community, including Richard Smith and Diane Patterson, came together to apply for the Department of Internal Affairs funded 4-year economic and development project to be administered by Central Otago REAP, both focusing on key areas such as tourism, heritage and social work. From this came the amalgamation of our key media, the radio station, and our community magazine, which have gone from strength to strength. We had all the rooms in the Centennial Milk Bar full, with different people, including massage therapists, nail technicians, and of course Project Maniatoto. However, expecting council to fill the role of an active landlord was unrealistic, and it's now a great space for our Art Deco wardrobe. This needed something like Project Maniatoto to keep the building full and used. That's what worries me about our current review of our buildings. The main one being our railway station. This is a key building to our streetscape alongside the Ranfurly Hotel and Centennial Milk Bar. Should an amalgamation of services going into the Centennial eventuate to allow Ranfurly Station to be converted into a much needed restaurant as suggested, for example, we do run the problem of filling vacant buildings. I'd like to think long term, and seeing businesses come and go in the area, including my own, is an issue. I encourage council to think of contingency planning if the railway station becomes empty in 10 years' time or whatever, such as filling it with pods of the Eden Hall collection or an art exhibition, both which our local arts community can assist with. We did try, going back a wee bit, to keep a dental practice here in Ranfurly, but at the end of the day, we were led to sell the practice when I was diagnosed with health issues. Along the lines, I also became a regional field advisor for Haringa Anuku, the Outdoor Access Commission, at the Otako Waitaki near Catlins regional field advisor. This has turned into a passion of which I'm privileged to work for national government from home part-time, which allows me to still volunteer. I became more involved in outdoor projects, which include the Upper catchment group, stepping up my participation through the application of funding for the Te Aki Maniatoto project during COVID. This was a chance to give locals and visitors the confidence to better access and enjoy the Taiari Awa. This mahi is now being realised, with the project receiving 4.5 million from the Ministry for Environment and now reaching completion. 6 section is what we're working on now. Working in with council area around access and agreements on use of unformed legal roads, ULR, the development of our recreational sites has been integral. Land use may change in the next 50 years, and the access our ULR provides may become vital again, never to be brought back once stopped. I would encourage council to uphold the ULR whenever possible, with the understanding that these are an integral tool to connecting our community today and well into the future. I'm happy to come and formally present to council at any time on all land tenure and legalities around that. I will also take the opportunity to encourage council to take a good look at Turnahikataka, Taieri Lake. I'm encouraging everyone possible to resource telling the story of this integral story of our history. As a Mahika Kai site where Māori hunted and camped, socialised with other hapu, some kaiakitanga, care for the site is needed and a long-term plan developed. This site featured heavily in your recreation strategy. In 2021, when Kaumātua Edward Ellison confirmed the te reo spelling of Maniatoto, I felt empowered to widely communicate what I had always known, Maniatoto, plains of blood. The connection to our Māori heritage was only just being explored. As recommended by yourselves, I will continue my advocacy of bringing the community along this journey of discovery, including teaching kaupahaka at Maniatoto Area School and via our local media. Small steps, but my main focus has been to ensure that the correct spelling is not lost for a third time in history, and I'm happy to say we are seeing the correct spelling used far more widely than ever before. We have many to thank for the current mahi on our 20-year dream to move the radio station from AM to FM. This will enable a far better listening experience, as well as preparing us better in our civil defence planning. In addition to my announcing, I'm now back on the radio board and look forward to seeing positively Maniatoto magazine and Burn Radio go from strength to strength. Rural Art Deco Incorporated and Maniatoto Community Arts and Culture Incorporated have a strong relationship and have achieved a lot together, and we will continue to do so. However, we have made a conscious decision not to amalgamate, as we feel it's still important to have two separate entities. The Maniatoto Arts Incorporated will be fully incorporated by June this year, so we'll be able to apply for larger funding amounts, though we look forward to working with Council on some well-needed extension plans for our Community Arts Centre. More recently, I've become Secretary of the Kyburn Hall Committee, and I've also been assisting the Kyburn community with our loss of Scotland Bridge. Both are very tricky issues, which I will progress over the winter. I'm also working with our local oral histories and hoping to get some funding to bring those together formally in line with the collection already held at Burn Radio, as well as assisting with the Ranfurly 125 history book. Ngā mihi nui for having me here today and trusting me with your time.
Kia ora. Thank you, Amy. Anybody got any questions for Amy?
Sounds like any committee you're not on?
If they need help, I'll help.
And I love the performance from the Kapahaka group at the area school awards at the end of last year.
Yeah.
It's great.
We got it in the end.
Yeah. Practice, mate.
Learning as we go.
Absolutely.
We've got nearly half the school in Kapahaka now.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. So hard to juggle, but
That's cool.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we welcome Tanya Murray from the Maniatoto Business Group.
Good morning all. And firstly, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to come and talk about the business group. Now, Derek Kane was meant to be here, but he's actually away on business up in Auckland. So I'll just run through some of the stuff that the business group aspires to do, or is more of a working business group. So Derek has been the chair of the business group. He started in the beginning of 2024, and really trying to promote and look hard at what was needed, what was required for the sake of running businesses, and also attracting more tourism to our area. So the business meetings are run monthly, and they're on every third Wednesday with an agenda and meetings. Now this year in the 2025, Derek proposed that we go on the road, which was amazing. So we're all doing roadies because we are the Maniatoto business group and not solely Ranfurly. So we've been to the Naseby, and we've been out to the Waipiata Pies and area which Mark did a lovely great speech on his hotel and his business. And then it was also into the Ranfurly railway station. The next one in April will be in a touring colour. So the business is flexible in the fact that we can run it in the mornings or the evenings to allow better business representation. We've had excellent representation from the CODC and across the EDU and tourism community development councillors, Tim, and also our mayor has all made an effort to come out and listen to what we talk about. So streetscaping, that was something that I'm quite passionate about, and that came about through doing a SWOT report on what was the things in Ranfurly and how they were proceeding. Sort of came back within our business group that it looked a bit tired and felt tired. The opportunity came about with a group called the Southern Dash, who donated their time to garden and also gifts for our school students. The St. John's and the Minnesota Area School benefited, also a church group also benefited from these kind donations that this group came through. Amy actually put us in contact with Murray, who was organising that, which was fantastic. And we were able to work with Gordon and created 3 new gardens through also massive client donations from Tiaku that donated the plants and also did some of the digging of the holes so the plants would survive, also giving great start to good compost and good soil. So the gardens are outside the Art Deco, that was just stones and rocks, and now it's beautiful native plants. Outside the toilet block was just a couple of dead trees that we had. Now that's looking better. And then there was one empty space on the main street close to the vets. So we have also a very small volunteer that helped with the gardens around. And we encourage businesses to have pots and plants outside their buildings. We encourage landlords or businesses to paint the buildings. And I'm in constant work with Gordon to help create a sustainable environment that attracts everybody and also attracts more tourists to our region. We will be talking tomorrow at the community board to explain and to gain support also for this. We have requested that our iconic railway building have permanent lighting on it. We work with Tiaki, in particular Bill, to get more murals up and around our business buildings. And we are in communication with Ken and Colin about the rail trade projects that they have, which is exciting. And in future, we hope to have local artists work on sculptures for more in our main street. We also ask for flags to be flown and have light bulbs to be replaced. So also the lighting of the railway station, we propose this to go on our long-term plan. We see that as a great benefit to our area. Such a beautiful building. And in particular, we've been working with signage. So we're to get new large signs up, and they're further out into Ranfurly. So visitors had more time to prepare to come in and not go down off the road and actually come in and have some time in the Ranfurly region. We have an exciting format that Ranfurly has its own signs coming in and out of our little town. And there's been a working group that has put together, this is just a proposal concept. Everyone can have a look at that, but like they've discussed many times that Ranfurly is a railway town. We were born out of the railway station. And we still survive today with railway. So we love this concept, and this is something that we actually hope to realistically have up before the end of the year. So that's exciting. There's been a group of people that have done a lot of hard work on that, individually and through the business group. It's 5 metres high and has 7 railway icons placed horizontally with the Ranfurly Valley going vertically at that side. That's a concept and still needs obviously looked at. The annual Christmas festival and Christmas tree lighting, we hope to upscale this with more events, have supercars, more supercars, there's more egg hunt for the children and more stall holders to attract, more town participation. It was well supported last year, so that's exciting. And Matariki, we'd like to have that as a focus in the meaning of Toto, and for Ranfurly holding events, Naseby holding events in the Tory. So we have Fletcher, a young flying young lad that has designed a Māori Toto flag, and that's now available. We're excited about his journey and just encouraging someone that is in his 20s to do that. An event calendar is to be organised by Russ and Janine, and for the money of Toto. So we hope to hold more events. This is a big part of what we need to do as a business group. It's all the events in our region. We recognise that this is important. Derek is now on the Business South Advisory Committee to help promote the money of Toto and what our businesses may require. Our neat places, which is very exciting, and help with the Central Tourism Board and CODC. We had 10 spots in this wee booklet, money of Toto, and then there's 3 other businesses that got highlighted. So very, very proud of the fact that we're punching well above our weight. Yeah, these are amazing business that we had contact with. They are actually planning and planting right now a garden in our main street, and that's between Janine and the ICL buildings. So that's very exciting. They are transitioning into a nursery and to be a commercial operation. So we hope to support that and promote that. So there's so much tourism that they can bring to our region with what they're doing. And then also looking, and we had the Lions group come out and talk to us also. So that's exciting because they are a group that really can actually make things happen.
Wonderful.
And so that's us. And any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions for Tanya?
Thanks for telling me about Fletcher Dowling. I'll be talking to him. He's been exported to Cromwell.
He was flying in Cromwell, which is...
Has he? Goodness me, I don't know how he managed to do that. Conversation.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your time. You are, of course, welcome to stay for the meeting if you'd like to. If you're not needing to rush back to work. Right, we have now got confirmation of the minutes, which are on page 7. Can somebody who was there on that day please move those if they are true and accurate? Thank you, Sarah. Seconded. Thank you, Cheryl.
Aye. Oh,
All those in favour? Again, today. Carried. We've had coffee. Come on, guys. Come on. Declarations of interest outlined on page 18. If anybody has any amendments that they need to make, please let Wayne know. And just a reminder to step aside from anything that you have a conflict with, or have a chat to us if you're not sure. Usually we would have the community board chair update, but Rob is not here at this point. We anticipate he's coming, so if he is not held up elsewhere, we'll just pause for him later on. And now, because I've written her name with 3 exclamation marks, I will hand over to Cheryl to run the 3 waters and waste portfolio item.
Thank you.
Well done.
oh, cheat.
So up to item number 25.4.3 on page 23, proposed wastewater environmental performance standard, and we've got Julie with us. I'm just taking through this questions that I can't answer. I'm not a scientist, so the questions get kind of scientific. To be fair to these guys, they're not either those.
But if I can't answer them.
Scientists.
Yeah.
Last week. Presentations. So I guess as an introduction, what I would say is that wastewater is a reality of life, and it's something that most people prefer probably not to really to. And it only really comes up when great spills go up, when something goes wrong, which is affecting environmental outcomes, and then it becomes really quite topical. And the reality is in order to get better environmental outcomes, we would need to spend a lot more money, and there's always this trade-off. And so we're going to give a presentation today that's from the perspective of council having to deliver wastewater treatment plants and the reality of what these proposed standards will mean for us and being able to achieve the delivery of projects and consents processes that we have to meet. We're not commenting on environmental aspects, and we appreciate that there will be strong views within the community around the environmental aspects. We don't feel we're actually qualified to make comment on those, but you might like to add some flavour to that as we go through the discussion. So if you can go to the next slide. Rebecca, make a slide. So the draft standards are currently out for consultation. What I've got involved there is the final standards might change. This is really just a discussion document. It's not even the real details specific of the standards. So the draft was released on the 26th of February. We have till the 24th of April to make submissions. We're claiming that they're currently aiming for adopting these in August 2025 after the local government or services bill is enacted. And so we are aiming to have our submission ready to be submitted by the 16th of April. And that's because we're running into that Easter break then, and we're going to start a break over that period. It's just better if we can get it in before Easter. So, Wayne, next slide. So the draft standards will provide us with some nationally consistent performance standards. Now, the reason that matters is because when we get into economic regulation looks at two things. It looks at the quality of the service that's being provided or the cost of that service. And across New Zealand at the moment, there are 12 different regional councils, I believe. I have that wrong. But every regional council applies these the requirements around wastewater differently. And so there's no ability to do any kind of consistent benchmarking across it other than to say, are you compliant with your standards? Do you have abatement notices in place when any prosecutions occur? Which isn't really giving a really good outcome of what the level of services that's being provided for the sum of money that the community is paying for. So this will shine a light on that and make it more transparent. It will provide us with certainty regarding the required standards and the treatment quality. So it's quite challenging at the moment. If we look, we've got a couple of consents coming up in the next few years. One is, we've got three actually, Omacare and Back Roxburgh Village, both of which were given 5-year extensions, so we could work through some designs. And Alexandra will come up in the not too distant future as well. So at the moment, we don't know what the standard is that will be imposed through the consent. We do a lot of work with the stakeholders leading into that, and there's a lot of negotiation and that goes on through that process to get to a point where we think people will agree so we can get it through the consenting process. But even that, there's no guarantees you can get into the consenting process and the standards can change on you. So it's very hard to design for that. And there's a lot of money gets spent on consultant reports, investigations, studies for these projects. And that's taking a lot of time. So it takes us a lot. I think I see, with the likes of Alexandra, it would be at least a 7-year project that costs the money. Part of that is because it takes a couple of years to get through the consenting process. So they're also proposing to give us our longer term consent periods of 35 years, which obviously is helpful when you're delivering. When you're investing a lot of money into infrastructure upgrades, you do want to have some certainty that what you're building is going to be fit for the foreseeable future and not change again in 6 years' time. These are long life assets that we're building. For reduced planning and consenting costs, which I've commented on. Greater standardisation of plant design and operation. Now, the government is specifically trying to get standardisation of plants that service townships of under or communities of less than 1,000 people. And the theory behind that is that will ultimately reduce the costs because there'll be a lot of these package plants being constructed. They'll be built off-site, transported to site. They can build them. There's businesses that have set themselves up that just produce these plants really cost effectively. And then they've got increased risk management for overflows and plant bypass. So I'll talk about those in a bit more detail going through there. So they're aiming to reduce our consenting cost by 40%. That's what they think. And so it's not, we would anticipate to spend probably on a big project, $1 million to $2 million on consenting, with all the studies and the specialist advice that we have to get there. Regional councils must implement any requirements that are imposed in the standards, and they can't include any conditions and consents which are more or less restrictive. And where there's infrastructure proposed to meet the required standard, if we say we're going to meet that standard, then they have to issue the 35-year consent to get the benefit of that investment. Next slide, Wayne.
So with the government proposing the changes they're doing now on the RMA, will that have an effect as well on
We're
the?
going to talk about that because those are sections as well. So the current stats statement or the status of the wastewater standards, what's interesting is that what they're saying in the documentation that we've been provided is the standards will take precedence over national directions and plans, which is highly unusual. And usually it's the other way around. They are making changes to consultation processes. And so at the moment, the consultation that occurs on what we have to build largely comes through the RMA process of the issuing of the consent. And so the communities obviously have ability and all the stakeholders to have input into the consent process. But that will change. They won't have that ability through the consent process, but they will have ability through council's long-term processes. So council, and I've given you an example here of Omacare. So you could identify in LTP that you've got two options. You've got a highest discharge to land option that might cost $25 million, or a lower cost still treated discharge at maybe $2 million. I'm plugging a number of my head there. And then the community would have the opportunity to tell you which option they prefer, because there's a trade-off in there between costs of delivery versus the discharge method that is applied. And then council would make that decision for its internal process. The plant would have to meet the new national standard. It can't be a lower standard than that, but you can apply a higher standard if you wanted to as council. So, yeah, that's probably, is there any questions on that? Because that's a real key little thing in here.
Thanks. There's a bit of tension there, isn't it? Because you consult the community where the plant is going to go, but the rating for that plant is district wide. So,
No, so you'll consult the community, you'll consult the district through the LTP.
rather than the town level. So it's a district wide consultation.
So, if in Omacare, someone has to make the decision in the sense that you're saying that you could consult going to land, and that'd be the preferred priority, but if you take your 20 million to $2 million, where would council sit in that consultation process if it chose to take the rate component of it, financial contribution?
So you'll be, putting aside CCOs, ultimately the community pays either through their rates or water charges, one way or another. Part of the challenge at the moment is that there's huge tension, and that you read in the background documentation, there's a lot of plants that are not consented around New Zealand, and there's a huge standoff line where stakeholder groups want a very high environmental standard and everything to go to discharge to land, whereas communities have to pay for this, saying we just can't afford this. We wouldn't be able to afford to live in these communities if you build $100 million project for a 6,000 people community. And that's the kind of numbers we're talking about here. So for some of these. So there's just this standoff happening where the willingness to pay is down here, but a desire around the environmental outcomes up there. And this is trying to say, well, we're going to put it back in the hands of the community that's paying us to make that decision around where are they willing to make that trade-off, but they can't go lower than a basic standard. And it would be the councillors around this table that make that call, which help with the consultation process.
Tracy's got a question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Julie. You just actually answered part of what I was asking about with regards to those stakeholder groups and what's the impact they're going to have. But what I want to know is how is all of this going to interact with what's just been announced in relation to scrapping of the RMA? And yeah, I'm just a little bit worried about how this is all going to plan out. There's going to be even more delays for our community.
That's a good question. They do have a bit in the background information around the RMA, but this basically, you know, they're saying these standards will take precedence over some of those documents. So I would imagine they're going to write this into. There is probably going to be an amendment to the RMA, I'm guessing. Listen, do you want to comment on it?
So good question, and I think the answer is we don't know yet, because obviously the RMA, there's talk about, as Julie said, scrapping it entirely and introducing new legislation. There's conversation around setting environmental bottom lines so that people actually, whilst increasing private property rights. It's all a bit up in the air at this stage, and until we get further down the track, and Julie and I need to have some conversations on it, because the RMA, there is national direction and national policy as well as the Act. And it's where the government choose to go, and we'll obviously have opportunities to participate in that as well. There's a very strong financial driver to these projects, as Julie's highlighted. There's also an environmental framework, and we have communities who are very interested in our environment as well. So you'll have that ability to comment through the RM reform at the same time. So this all has to line up together. Yeah.
What I would say is they're intending to roll this out faster than the RM reform though. So they're rolling it out pretty fast indeed. I think I do have a meeting in Wellington tomorrow though, where they're discussing, there's someone from Te Mana Aroa coming along to discuss with council staff who want to know more about it. I'll ask them about that RM interface.
I just got a question.
Julie, is there any indication that the government is looking at amending the national policy statement on freshwater?
Not in this, no indication in this, but that's the interesting thing was that the standard takes precedence over the national policy statement, which is really unusual.
Yeah, so that's from an RMA perspective, the MPs usually take more weight that standards do, but this is totally flipping that over. So the standards will apply across the board.
Yeah, I understand that. I just wondered whether they would harmonise by addressing the national policy. But there's no indication that they're doing that.
I don't know. I haven't heard. I think what I guess what this comes down to is so under the Water Services Act 2021, Te Mana Aroa are able to set national standards for wastewater performance. It's already in the legislation.
The key thing here is they're still building the plane while they're trying to fly it.
Yeah.
It's at the moment it's taxiing, and they're still trying to make it so how's it going to fly? And there's two different streams, and eventually you'd expect they'll line up, and until then, wait and see.
Yeah, because the way it's looking is because this has been fast tracked to a certain extent, and the RMA reforms are sort of tailing in behind. Hopefully they'll butt into each other at some stage, but right now it's quite confusing.
It is, yeah. So next slide, one. So in terms of potential outcomes, it's pretty clear that there will be less opportunity for stakeholders to influence the solution through the RMA process than currently exists. And so at the moment, there would be a high level of engagement that occurs through that pre-consent process with Mana Whenua, Fishing Game, Forest and the Department of Conservation. and the community environmental groups or stakeholder groups as well. But what the flip side of that is there's probably going to be more opportunity for local communities to influence the solution through those existing local government consultation processes. Because I think by and large, the wider community doesn't engage in the RMA process because they don't always understand that implication to them paying for the solution. And there definitely will be quicker and less costly investigation, design and consenting processes. So that's.
So by consulting the LTP process, the consultation is not going to be around the environmental standards, it's going to be around the costs.
Yeah.
So that, you know, with the cheaper options being proposed, may not have the same high environmental standards associated with it. The public will make the decision on what it's costing them.
I think,
As opposed to any potential degradation in the environment.
to be fair, I think, you know, what we're seeing is happening in Queenstown today, there's a much greater awareness from communities around this stuff than there once was. So, you know, I wouldn't want to suggest that where a community sits on the financial environmental trade-off, and that's why we've said we're not going to comment on that today, because short of asking them, but that is actually going to bring it to them to make that trade-off. Basically, but bearing in mind, there's a minimum standard here that you cannot overlap.
Yeah.
You know,
You can't ignore that.
But does it not make it hard for us to plan?
no, it makes it easier for us to plan because we know what the minimum standard is, and we can, at least we know that. At the moment, we don't know anything, to be honest, other than at the moment there's through the draft regional land and water plan, there was a clear indication that we were going to have to put all of our discharges to land.
But, I mean, just to comment, it's not necessarily environmental trade. I don't think the word trade-off is the right word between
It can be cultural.
discharge. In scientific terms, there's no trade-offs being given between environmental cost.
I would say that maybe for some of these there could be, because we might get into what
So there might be specific situations, but for the general rule, I don't think trade-off is the right word.
And we are talking about treated wastewater discharges here. We're not talking about raw sewage being discharged.
The plant's standardized standard.
Yeah.
Then you've got consistency. It's easier to standardise treatment methodologies.
But when you've got every community might have a different standard based on what the seeding process went through, it's very hard to standardise the construction of those plants.
And therein lies one of the biggest issues going forward, is some of the community expectations to what's going to be regulated may not align. But we'll play the hand that we're dealt with the regulations that exist, and then the other processes will take care of themselves. And as we just said before, some of them aren't clear what they're going to be like going forward, and you'd hope that the regulators get it right so we can do what we need to do for the community that ultimately is going to have to pay for it.
So next slide, Wayne. So now I'll get into what that actually means around the standards. So it's that if we're discharging to water, bearing in mind we can discharge to water or to land, but for discharges to water, that they're largely assessed based on the dilution factor. So what is the quantity of treated wastewater discharge versus the flow rate of the river or the receiving water that you're discharging into? So for small schemes, and our class small schemes is those that are under 1,000 people. Sorry. And if you had trade waste going into, if you had a small town with a high loading of trade waste, it might not fit in that category because it is based on some scientific parameters in there. They would largely have separate, less stringent treatment requirements. So they're kind of saying that the processes we have currently in place at the likes of Omaha, Oxford, would so the pond discharge system that exists in many small towns around New Zealand. For large urban area discharges to the open ocean, they would actually have lower treatment requirements. So they typically tend to be large cities that discharge to oceans, not so much smaller communities. And then for smaller urban areas, and we actually had a look online in Denton's that with our legal permit producing renewable information, they call them the squeezed middle. They actually would need to have some additional treatment processes rather than just having ponds, basically treat nitrogen and phosphorus. So there are communities over 1,000 people, but they're not big cities discharging into the ocean. And there would be an end of pipe standard. So the standard is set on what that is coming out of the end of the pipe into the environment. Right, and they don't really look at what that quality of the water is that it's going into. So currently they would look at your discharge quality and the quality of the water. And they also that's going into, and we might have to treat to a higher standard if the water quality was already low, that might be taken into account. And that also doesn't take into effect cumulative effects. So at the moment, when they're considering consents, they look at the cumulative effects of different discharges going into water. That won't take into consideration of the wastewater discharges. Questions about that?
I've got one. So when we're saying that it's discharged, if where it's being discharged to is of a lower quality, that means you've got to get a higher quality.
Yes, but at the moment, I think when we did the Cromwell upgrade, the quality of the discharge was almost higher than the quality of the lake. Yeah. So, yeah.
So the key thing is there's a whole lot of natural stuff that goes in. And we add to that, and what we add may be better or worse depending on what it is. And time is everything.
So for discharges to land, next slide, please. So they will require a site-specific risk assessment, and then they determine a risk class based on basically the geologic conditions that you're going into. And then they set treatment requirements for key contaminants for each of those risk classes. This actually excludes rapid infiltration basins. So that was initially the design idea that we were coming up with. Omakawa, Roxburgh would be considered probably rapid infiltration basins, and but I imagine what they've got in Queenstown is rapid infiltration basins as well. So they will be expanded. It's a discharge to land.
Yeah.
So it's right beside. But it's not a sprinkler system that goes into a bed, then it drains away. That's a rapid infiltration.
Are there any standards around the reusing of treated wastewater?
Yeah, that's part of this. That is in the standard. We are actually unable to assess some of our against those standards. So that would be Maysby, Roxburgh, and the Roxburgh Village, with the land discharge. But we do think that actually land discharge is probably going to be a better option for Ranfurly going forward, because Ranfurly has a low dilution ratio, and even though it's a small scheme, it doesn't have a high enough dilution ratio to meet the requirements, because it basically goes into the ditch that doesn't really have a lot of water in it at the end of the wetland. So it's treated, it's probably similar quality to the water you would find in a little creek, but there's not enough of a dilution factor, so we may need to look at a land discharge or Ranfurly instead of what we're doing now. And that can be through, they put in subsoil irrigation systems that they do.
Just a question, Chair. You have Roxburgh and Lake Roxburgh Village in there for land discharge, but obviously, given where they are proximity to the river, the dilution option is, they meet that standard comfortably.
Yes, so Roxburgh is the rapid infiltration basin that we class as that.
Okay, that would be classed, yes, of course.
So because it doesn't tell us how to assess that, because the roads are excluded from the standard. What we know is Roxburgh would meet the standards for a direct discharge to the river. And so while it's excluded, we would anticipate that we're going through, and likewise for Lake Roxburgh Village, if we were going through a consenting process, we could have a conversation with the consent authority around our option here is to do this discharge to land that we're proposing, or we can discharge to the river under the national performance standards. And we would anticipate that they would say the discharge to land option was a better option and be more amenable to getting through a more streamlined consenting process. Because if you're going to have to go through a really laborious way, and for Lake Roxburgh Village, we haven't been able to get consent for that because we haven't been able to get stakeholders to agree to the land discharge proposal that we've got.
Why won't they agree?
Because they want us to move it.
Those
Was
stakeholders.
that plural stakeholders?
There's two stakeholders, one of there's a number of stakeholders, one stakeholder.
Yeah.
Just get it further away. And so at the moment, that's sort of stumbling for us. We don't get that through the consent process. Without them signing off that they were in agreement, we had to go to a notified consent, which we may could do, but it costs us more money. Next slide, please. So for biosolids, they set out an approach for grading biosolids. So if you remember, biosolids are the solid stuff that comes out of the treatment process. And where we've got ponds, when we desludge ponds, the desludged materials of biosolid at Alexandra, we're producing that biosolid continuously. So there's an approach for grading biosolids that then sets out how you can safely reuse them. So it sets restrictions on low-grade, reuse of low-grade biosolids, but yeah, so this doesn't apply to any private networks or sector. So that'd be separate. They're not covered by this. But it would be it would help to improve our understanding of what the opportunities are for reuse. So at the moment, that's really complex. You know, it's a very specialist field. You have to bring people in who know a lot about this stuff to give you advice. Whereas we had a better understanding of what we could possibly reuse those biosolids, and then that in turn then indicates how you might want to do treatment of those to be able to reuse them.
And toxic, is it?
It depends how many treatment processes you put on top of it too.
I saw that Dunedin City has the only biosolids incinerator in Australasia. What's their catchment for that?
I think they're thinking about it.
Okay, wow.
Know that they
The
did.
Taumata Arawai consultation document seems to think that they have one.
I think what they might have, I'm not familiar enough.
So just burn it.
I guess so. It just says incineration. Some examples of management of biosolids in New Zealand include the Tahuna wastewater treatment plant, owned and operated by DCC, operates the only biosolids incinerator in Australasia.
And they might, yeah,
Sounds like they do.
they may well have. But it's certainly, that is a looming issue for us that we've got to be very ahead and soon about. When we're desludging ponds, we conveniently put it into geobags. The geobags are not going anywhere. At some point, they can have to be dealt with. So, and it's costly to deal with. So we think that this is a good idea, setting these standards. It's going to be helpful. So next slide, Wayne. So they talk quite a lot about overflows and bypasses. And if you cast your mind back a few years ago, and it was a number of years ago now, Queensland Lakes District Council got prosecuted by the LRC for overflows in their network. And at that time, they applied for a resource consent for the overflows because the judge basically said you need a consent. You can't avoid having overflows. You can't eliminate them completely. You need to have consent so that when they happen, and there was big uproar about consenting, and I think we made a submission. We certainly would support it if we consent activity. So what they are saying is that basically putting a framework around the management and mitigation of those so that when they happen, there would be processes and plans in place for how to deal with that. We actually do have quite a good overflow plan that was based on what Queensland prepared, but some places don't have those. We would need to apply for a consent, and it would be the ORC would have to give us a consent, but provided we meet the requirements of the management of it.
They would only work in an adverse situation, of course.
Yeah.
It wasn't like if a mains blow out in the main street or something, block the lane.
The, a blockage that flows back up through a manhole.
What's being able to be able to turn off parts of your articulation and store it. A lot of systems don't have that storage, which, you know, this council's invested a lot in over the last 20 years.
So we did use a lot of that government water stimulus money to improving our storage of generations and that, because this was a real problem for us, and we've done a lot of storage. But I always hold all of it back if you've got a blockage in the retic network. But we also have occasions where if something goes wrong, you can end up with process overflow within your plant, and the process bypass admin because a piece of plant's broken down, or it's you've got high stormwater infiltration coming in and you can't manage the flow going through the plant. So that can end up with process bypass. And we've had that happen here at Ranfurly, and we have those masters never again. Questions we've had issues in the past too.
Yeah, that's why some people wonder why we ask them to take the stormwater connections off wastewater. It does have a serious impact.
I think just something you should be aware of though is there's two things. We will be required to have a period for desludging ponds on our consents, and we have now programmed desludging on a regular basis in our long-term plans and budget forecasts. But you know, most of our plants have been desludged, you know, so that's going to be an ongoing cost that will come through. And the other thing is we're going to have to write wastewater management plans for all 8 of our schemes. Now, that is no small undertaking. We have to do water management plans. We have to do it's 8, but 8 water facilities. So they there was 7 wastewater plants and 8 water plants. So that we thought you would do a water management safety plan, and you would have a water safety plan, and you might look at it every 3 years and update it if needed. But that's not the way that works. We've been told these water safety plans have to be updated annually and have all reviewed them annually. So the workload coming on our team for this is huge.
But that's unrealistic, isn't it? We haven't got to ensure we haven't got a minimum standard on that product we are producing. We don't know how to get rid of it, but we've got to have a management plan every year.
It's the regulatory environment we have to operate in.
Yeah, that's the new regulatory environment.
Just copy and paste and send it on back.
Well, we spent $350,000 safety plans.
How much?
$350,000 getting someone in consulting them to write an original water safety plans for us. And
you told me it's not relevant again now.
they need a major rework because that drinking water regulator didn't really give a lot of guideline around what the plan should look like. And then when we did them, they said, oh, you know, don't like that so much.
That's nearly 1% of the rates.
Right. So we're currently rewriting a new in-house.
Can't do that too much.
Which is a lot of work. It's a full-time job.
Just going back to bias from it, there are examples in New Zealand where much has been centralised.
Yep.
And is that's a piece of work that we've got to do to see what the scale is that might be economic?
We have some money in the budgets, I think, for next year to do a bit of investigation around what we could look at.
That's on the agenda.
That's some funding for that investigation, but there's no funding for what the solution might be.
No.
So I don't know what the solution will be, but it will be very expensive. Yeah. So next slide. So the implications for CODC for each of the plants are, so for Cromwell, we are likely to need to add in additional treatment processes for nitrogen, ammonia and phosphorus. The consent for Cromwell's quite a way out, but we have, in a few years, we have a nitrogen limit. The nitrogen in the current limits in the current consent reduce in a few years. So we may have to do some upgrades before then. So Alexandra, the current plant would be compliant based on its recent performance, and I said recent performance only, bearing in mind it doesn't always perform amazingly because it's an old plant and things break down. So we would still need to invest money at Alexandra, but we could continue to have the discharge to the river, which is looking at like around 35 million as opposed to over 100 million for a land discharge. So there is a significant amount of money in this. Ranfurly, the dilution to the creek is too low to meet the requirements, so we would need to do an upgrade here. Roxburgh, a discharge to water would be compliant, so therefore we are assuming that the discharge to land would be satisfactory, and we wouldn't really need to do a lot of investment there. Omaka would be compliant to have a discharge to the river under the dilution factor, but we just need to check because they talk about rocky river bottoms, and it does have a rocky river bottom, and so we would need to do a bit more detailed look at whether that's going to be a problem or not.
What's the difference from the rocky and the sandy one or mud? Why is there a difference?
I would imagine the common.
Most rivers have got rocks in them somewhere.
Yeah.
That's the algae
So a rock is like, I guess, so the speed of the river will be as much of an issue as oxidation for the algae not to grow.
Yeah.
So you could pump it to the steepest and narrowest part of the river, or let it run to a faster moving part would oxidise more.
Yeah. Look, I don't know what the solution is, but yeah.
That's a good idea.
Now, look, what it basically means for Omaka is that a package treatment plant out of the floodplain may well be, and I don't want to put my neck on the line here because we obviously need to look into the detail, may be a more affordable solution.
Well, the other one was 60 million, wasn't it? 25.
And that was based on some assumptions around what we could achieve, looking at achievable ideas. So this could be a better, lower cost solution for us. So Naseby, we're not actually sure because it is actually a discharge to land. It's once again, it goes into a basin, so we're not sure really what that would be. And Lake Roxburgh Village, we are already planning to do a new package plant because the old plant is old, and our current consent has a very low consent requirements and the consent conditions, and so even these standards would require a higher standard than what we're doing.
So if we don't know, how does a regulator know that we're a breach of the regulation?
Because we have consents and we're breaching the consent conditions, they will look at the consent condition that exists now. So really what we're saying is we don't know whether these standards will be better or worse for Naseby because they haven't given us enough detail around what just those.
So a difference of Roxburgh scheme, Roxburgh Village or Lake Roxburgh Village and Naseby scheme.
So the difference at Roxburgh is it's got a great big river flowing right.
Yeah.
And we could discharge to the river, whereas Naseby doesn't have a big river. And so the dilution factor might not be high enough.
Yeah, because it's really a combination of land and water, isn't it? The channel.
Well, it does go down through the basins. Tracy?
Yeah, so if I'm hearing this correctly, what you're saying is that potentially everything that we've known about the Menehirakia and it not going to be a goer to do that is now potentially going to be a goer to discharge to the Menehirakia.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, so that ties back into what we were talking about earlier, doesn't it, in relation to stakeholder groups and how much impact they're going to have and what weighting that's going to be given. So this is a really major major piece of work that's going to be quite complicated.
Yes, and so what we would have to do for Omicare is go back to the drawing board because the rules have changed. The whole playing field's changed about what we will have to do. So we have a whole lot more options have opened up to us.
How much does that cost us to go down that other channel? Like it's obviously cost the workload that you start to be huge.
Yeah. We don't know because we don't know what the design solution is yet, so we can't price it, but it would be significant.
Spent a lot of money going down the other option, haven't we, as well? Not
Huge amounts of money, but we have done some investigation work up on that plateau. Not huge amounts here.
Taylor? On that, I'm hoping you can cover off, and I've checked with Peter that it's okay to cover this with you now, Julie, to put you on the spot. Potentially from tomorrow, Queenstown Lakes District Council may look to discharge 12,000 cubic metres of treated wastewater a day into the Shotover and nearby the Kawerau River. Can you provide some update to the elected members here on what might be coming downriver towards our communities?
So provided the treatment processes meet the required standards, and I would assume they do, you would look at the dilution factor, the quantity going in versus the quantity in the river, and if it meets the required dilution factor, which is in the document, then it would be allowed to be discharged. Provided the right treatment processes. So it would be what is the quality of the water coming in the pipe at the end. If it ticks all the required standards, it could go into the river, provided the dilution factors are big enough. I would assume it does tick most of the boxes, but I don't know. I haven't looked at it, so can't make a comment on that. And I would assume the dilution factor would be high enough to enable them to do that.
And I've done some numbers. I've done some numbers because I can, and not saying that I'm a scientist because I'm not. But if you look at 12,600 cubic metres a day, and that went into the Shotover at a mean flow of 30 cubics, it's over a total day, that volume of 12,600 is 0.0486%. Then you get downstream into the Kawerau with its mean flow at 175 and it's 0.083%. So I think what Julie's saying is that the dilution factor is going to be significant. Whether it meets the standard or not, I don't know, but my gut feel says surprised if it didn't. That's just the numbers. So you got to get 12,600 sounds like a really big number, and it is. But it'll depend on the quality of that effluent and then what the dilution factor does. And in terms of the total flow, it's quite minute.
I think it would be a good question to ask your VC.
And
does the end of pipe quality meet the discharge standards, and does the dilution factor meet the proposed discharge standards? And there's only those two things they need to answer.
Also the level of monitoring to gain public confidence. I'd be surprised if they didn't increase the level of monitoring.
Yeah, I think I cover that in my next slide. So just on Cromwell, the other issue for us around Cromwell is there's different standards there's different end pipe standards for lakes versus rivers. And there's a bit of a grey area around Lake Dunstan and the Cromwell discharge, because we were required to put the pipe out into the Kawerau channel when we did the upgrade there. So I don't know whether they would class that as a river discharge or a lake discharge. I suspect they'd go for the lower lake discharge. That'd be my guess.
Given that every lake has a current and a flow, it's a lake.
Either way,
some scientist or some technical person will decide that, but everything says to me it's a lake.
so it would mean extra processes. So our next slide one. So on the monitoring requirements, that there's much greater monitoring and something requirements required here. And so currently, we monitor Alexandra quarterly and Cromwell monthly. They would go to fortnightly monitoring for both of those. So there's a significant increased workload required, and there would be laboratory costs associated with that. And then for the other 6 sites, we have Roxburgh's currently 2 times a year. Naseby and Ranfurly we had to do quarterly, and Omicare and Roxburgh Village and monthly because they've got a more recent consents. So we would, you know, for 4 of those sites, there's quite a significant increase in monitoring costs. So that's probably the equivalent of another FTE plus lab costs. And you'll remember that when they brought in the drinking water quality assurance rules, that increased the monitoring requirements around drinking water, and we had to come back to council and ask for a significant uplift in our operating budget for that year because at the end being factored into our costs. So we probably learned from that, and we're thinking this could be, you know, it could be $200,000 to $300,000 a year.
Just in house.
We are bringing our monitoring in-house, so we would start, yeah. But this, you know, when people talk about why our council staff numbers going up, it's sometimes because we're bringing this work in-house and we're having to do this work that we never had to do before. And we're not saying, hey, we want it, but we'll do it.
So-
Yes.
Again, with no check attached.
So what was, and that's probably not an RMA thing, but will some of these regulatory changes that the present government through the water, will some of that diminish or is it going to get worse?
So it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse, whatever government it is, Stu, because economic regulation and performance monitoring requirements are going to just increase the amount of information that we're going to be reporting and way more regular and collating. It's going to be a lot of work associated with it. Next slide. So just on carrying on with the monitoring requirements, we will be required to publish our monitoring results and our compliance on our website. So, you know, it's an ongoing piece of work as well. We'll have increased annual reporting to both the ORC and to our ROI. So to give you an example for the performance reporting that happens on water supplies, each water supply has 120 rules that have to get reported on annually. And we have 8 water supplies. So when my team come back after Christmas and their year runs, so Tomato ROI are legally required to publish their report around the whole country by the 1st of July. That's in the legislation. So the reporting year runs from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. So staff come back from leave and they are bang into a month, 2 months of reporting. They have to have all the information submitted by the 28th of February. It's a highly stressful time. Yeah,
So one report can't do 8 plants. The links to it. The majority of the treatment will be the same.
Well, it takes 2 people. It all has to be input into the Tomato ROI portal. For each treatment supply and each of the 120 roles has to be done. And some of the in water, some of the monitoring is done by the minute. Yeah.
It's something we need to keep in mind when we're talking to people over the LCP process and those who are demanding that we cut staff to save money. This is a point where we need to remind those people that, I'm sorry, we can't.
Also in the other regulatory functions across.
Yeah, across
council, so it's not just the water.
It's just not water, it's becoming the fact is that we have, the regulations are becoming more intense across all our business, so we have to engage with more people and more reports need to be written and that more costs than, unfortunately, the ratepayer is the person who's paying for it.
So the last bullet point up there, I did think this did irk me a bit. We are going to be legally required to engage a third party to annually audit our audit to make sure that we're reporting honestly. Monitoring.
So the police are being police are being
How much would that cost, but
No audit's cheap, isn't it?
hundreds of thousands or 20s of thousands?
It's going to consume a lot of staff effort.
So, and it's a third party, but who's the third party? Is it got to be someone of a certain standing or can it be, can I just engage Cheryl to do it?
No, to do it. Currently,
Sure, Cheryl's got that.
now we have to engage Beaker to report to review our annual report figures that go into the council annual report for Audit New Zealand, and we pay them about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. And even if we're non-compliant, we're saying we're non-compliant, we have to pay Beaker to confirm we're non-compliant. Yeah.
Isn't there a ministry about rubbish regulations? Isn't there a ministry about it? Isn't David Seymour fixing that?
He started by looking at hair salons and tattooists. That's where
That's what he did too.
Right out of council.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really? Can you reply accordingly? I think you should look at something else.
Is it something we should bring up in the regional deal?
I don't think that's probably in their scope. So next slide, Wayne. So just, I mean, here you'll be able to pass it, you'll be able to see. So look, the guts of it is there will be no reduction to our 10-year budgets as a consequence with this performance standards, because we had actually anticipated we would be able to continue discharging to water for Alexandra. And if we had followed the rules of today, we would have had another $60 or $70 million in LTP for that project. We had also budgeted for a new plant at Lake Roxburgh Village and for nitrogen, some nitrogen removal at Cromwell, whether it's actually going to meet all the requirements, I'm not 100% sure at this time. We are likely to make savings at home account, but we expect we would have to redirect those savings into upgrades at Ranfurly and Norwood. So we think that the guts of it is, in terms of our capital program, it'll sit about the same. The other thing is that we are going to be required to install some additional monitoring boards on some of the sites to meet the standards, but we think that's not a high cost, that we would be able to incorporate that within the savings we make. And the next slide.
Have we had any steer as message from Tracy around, we've obviously spent a huge amount of time and money investigating options to head in a particular path that's now been a complete U-turn at a waste of a significant amount. Have we had any certainty come out that these standards will remain the standards regardless of who is in government?
Yeah, and look, that's a really good question, and I can't answer that. I know that when they were looking at the whole water reform thing, there was an initial Beaker report that put some billions of dollars on $1.8 billion or something, I think it was, around the wastewater upgrades that were required across New Zealand. And then we kind of got into it and we started to think, well, they way underestimated that, because if it's 100 million just for Alexandra, it's going to be a lot higher. So I would expect that there's a bit of a reality check happening across the country and the government around what the cost of these wastewater upgrades actually are, and how, as a nation, how do we afford that and deliver that?
Can't.
Okay, so that's all I can say is, so you would hope that people who had that, make those decisions and have that influence are taking that on board. So in terms of operating costs, there will be additional costs for sampling and monitoring. You know, there's staff, laboratory, courier and vehicle costs. We have to add in third-party audit costs. We do have to do, for our land discharge things, we have to do an initial soil sampling by a consultant and then have that done at 5-yearly interval. So there'll be that initial cost will go in straight away. We will have additional costs for preparing those management and response plans. And what I think we would be submitting on, and want to submit on, is that they give us an outline of what they expect one of these plans to look like, because a lot of money got wasted in preparing water safety plans, because they wouldn't give a template of what a water safety plan should look like. And when they got them in, they said, no, we don't like them. You should have done this, which was really unhelpful.
They been tomorrow.
Yeah. And then, you know, there will be some mana whenua cost, and we have to engage with mana whenua in developing the wastewater management plan, so it'll be costly. So while I don't think there will be an increase a significant increase to our capital program, there will be an operating cost increase around this, and we haven't had time to kind of price out what this might be. And it's sort of around the timing of our implementation too. At what point do they think? So one of the things I'd suggest we do set it on, because we got called out on this on the drinking water standards change, is that they're going to implement a change that starts on the beginning of a financial year for us, so that we've got time to budget for it. Putting things in place partway through financial years, we've already set our budgets, so that's going to be in a deficit.
Going back to Tamer and Tracy's point, who oversees Tamara ROI? Is that DIA?
They're a Crown entity, they report directly to them.
So what's stopping, if the government, they take Seymour, for example, is running down that regulatory role, them changing that, and well, we won't know that, I guess.
So look, what I would say, and I think this has been a huge misunderstanding across New Zealand, is this government's policies around Three Waters was never that there's not going to be any change. It was always that we will meet the standards and there will be higher monitoring and performance reporting requirements. So, you know, I don't think it matters what government's in. The expectation that Tamara, there has been a big shift in the standards here that are to our benefit. We'd be fighting a losing battle thinking we're going to reduce the monitoring requirements around that.
We've tightened up the rules, we've tightened up the implementation rules. I don't think, once the rules in place, changing government's not going to fit the rules.
And I think what they're saying is you can have a lower standard, but you will meet that standard consistently, and you will be monitoring it, and we will be watching you. And what they haven't said is what's going to happen when you don't meet the standards, because I expect there could be, you know, things do go wrong on lines.
We both think it's.
I don't think it will be a week based no.
So we're not getting a 40% reduction?
No. But to be fair, I probably factored that 40% reduction into the original capital budgets from what was in the National Transition Unit to what came to council.
So the 45% saving in RMA cost would just go to Three Waters.
Yeah, but I'm sitting there going, well, if they're trying to look at that regulatory framework, instead of doing as much testing, I mean, if they halved it or made it easier, that you didn't have to get audited over an auditor, that's stuff where it actually would make a difference.
And so we are bringing in the sampling and monitoring in-house this year. We set the budgets for that based on what we were paying the contractor for the baseline service, not for all the additional sampling. We're still setting that up. It's going to take us 6 months of delivering that to get a really good understanding of what the actual costs are. I'm 100% confident we can do it in-house for a lesser cost. I don't know how much for lesser cost that'll be, and it may be that we can accommodate some of this additional monitoring within that original budget, but we haven't done it yet to understand the cost. So, look, it's actually meant to be good news for us.
That's a good news presentation.
I'm 70 million back to put a discharge to land.
And ultimately, the standardisations are more friendly to council than what was previously intimated by the.
And you know, communities do still get to have their input through the LTP process and make the decisions around, you know, how much are they willing to pay to have a fire site. But certainly there's going to be a lot of people, you know, let's not sugarcoat it, who are upset by the shift to allowing discharges.
What's my party saying about this?
I haven't asked them, but I can imagine.
Well, not who are going to court, aren't they, at the moment?
They are, yeah.
And so that the outcome of that may have a flow on. That may be
Really?
across all the councils in South Island. But as yet, we don't know.
But we know that their preferences will discharge to me.
Yes, look, it's just untrue that with the changes proposed by this government, the RMA, that there is no reference to treating treaty obligations in the new act. It's been constantly left out. In the consultation document, they talk about the consultation with Hapu and iwi, but it's consultation right? Yeah, I just wonder whether it's with this current government's attitude towards the treaty and settlements, whether we're likely to see no references to treaty obligations within this proposal.
That's a political question that I'm.
No, but I'm saying when it comes to us putting a submission, and is that something that we as a council, because of a relationship with Ngāi Tahu, would like to reiterate our stance and our good working relationship?
And look, I think there was always going to be challenges come in the wastewater discharge space because we know Ngāi Tahu's preference is discharging to land. We know that the cost of that to communities.
Because currently we're celebrating this as a potential saving. If Ngāi Tahu take this through the legal process, we could still be challenged and obliged to actually spend $75–80 million, especially I'm concerned about what's facing Alexandra in the next 10 years.
Look, I would say that if we were going to be challenged, the place that would be the one that probably could come up would be on account. I think, you know, the Kluka River does, it is a very large body.
Yeah, it's that what,
and it's not
the dilution standards are really high. So science could be argued that yes, we have a spiritual connotation about cleansing and but science could argue that in a reasonably rational manner. Yeah, okay, I think that could be an issue, just charging for that and here. Yeah, okay.
so.
Hey, yeah, sorry, Julie. Given just after what Martin said, and given that we know that that is a high possibility with the Menyahera Kia, would we not still potentially go out to look at what we should be doing to avoid that? Because I'm just getting a little bit. I mean, this is where we're going to end up flip-flopping continually, and Omacau's not going to end up being. If it keeps getting pushed down the track because of successive governments, then it's not actually helping Omacau out at all.
Yes, so I think our big budget for progressing Omacau kind of hits our next financial year. So we're only doing a little bit of work there at the moment. We'll probably expand our thinking to what might be able to do under these standards, as well as initial investigation work that Patrick's team's done.
Literally pay for a worst case scenario.
Well, we've already done a bit of planning around some options. You know, the reality is that the initial geological investigation that they've done is on the site that we had identified as a possibility. It doesn't stack up probably for what we were intending to do. So we're going back to the drawing board anyway, don't we?
So can we just clarify that site bar alongside the reserve near the golf course in Oko is now off the table? It doesn't meet.
No.
It's not impossible, but tests and that we've done haven't been, you know, like unequivocal. Yeah, you can absolutely do it. So we are looking at other options, obviously, but it's definitely fully.
It's looking more unlikely. And I think people in the community we don't know what we're doing. So, yeah, we don't know what the answer is as yet. So for people to be thinking we've got our minds made up on something, we're a long way from coming to you with here's some options on the table to make it warmer. There's another conflict going yeah. And so this Omacau's wastewater was intended to be a consultation item in the next LTP. All we're doing up to the next LTP is naming down the options and what the solutions could be. We fully expected the community would get its ability to provide input into that through the next LTP consultation process, not the current one, the next one.
You've got to find out what better options, we've got sort of better option, you've actually got to find out the things in it first. And that's a very important step to take, is not roar in and go, this is the right answer, let's go for it. When you get right deep into the project and you have to backtrack out again, and you've expended a hell of a lot of money and you're not getting the right answer. So we're just trying to find what's feasible first and be able to do estimates on some of those solutions that we know are feasible.
So, yeah, if there's any key points, there is a question here. Tomorrow or whatever way they do the consultation, and always have questions that we go to an answer, but there's usually some full text boxes that I can in specific points. But there's certainly we would support parts of this, and there's some things where we would suggest that we'd like them nailed down better. It excludes discharge to air. We've still got to go and get a resource consent for discharge to air at these sites, which we don't think is necessarily, we can't understand how that's going to work. At the regional council said, we're going to play hardball here and we're not going to give you discharge to air. We're kind of going to be stuck between rock and a hard place again. So,
Are there any further questions?
You know,
Okay, so we'll go to the recommendations are A, receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B, agrees to a submission being prepared on the proposed wastewater environmental performance standards. And C, agrees that a submission be drafted based on discussion at the 26th of March council meeting and circulated to councillors for feedback prior to submitting on the 16th of April 2025. Do I have a mover?
Right. the only issue I've got with that though is that then we'd have to retrospectively approve the submission.
We usually have to do that because they don't really give us enough.
It's not the best way of doing it, but I respect that. It's not your fault.
Choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Martin will move it and Nigel's seconding. So, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks for that, doesn't
So the next item, 25.4.4,
You did.
Wayne,
Yeah, please tell me, you're gonna draw that.
gonna
Stay, no, yeah.
I'll be at the community board meeting tomorrow, because I'm going to come out for the project.
Do you want to make any comment on that one?
No, just it's withdrawn because they're not part of it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So, Timaru advised us just the other week, the members, CEs, that they're withdrawing from this, and they're sort of, as their preferred option, they're exploring another option with their surrounding councils. What that has done is put us 2 to 3 weeks behind in our own processes, because we had to accommodate them, bring them into the documentation, and you'll see some of we had to bring them into the numbers and into the approval reports. Now we're having to back them out.
So the costs we
We will be billing them for those additional costs incurred, but we've incurred delays.
So their reasoning for pulling out from us, are they going to go with someone else or go alone? Do they have to give us a reason, or what's their thinking?
They don't have to give us a reason, and we always said that every council was going to have off-ramps available, and that by signing on the dotted line as we did, there wasn't an expectation that you would continue until the very end. There will be other off-ramps for councils if any other councils chose not to continue with this, but the understanding at the moment is that the 4 councils who were originally in the CCO discussions remain in the CCO discussions, and that's the group that will be looking to consult with the public.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I asked that is that if their reason to go on their own or something else, is there something we're not picking up on, or?
I think they have big colleagues near to them, Waimate and Mackenzie, interested in exploring a sub-regional response, and but aren't overly interested at this point in time in looking south.
It's the time loss is disturbing, because we're going out for a consultation process with a deferred option, and we haven't even got the data for the other options. presenting to.
So, so what we have some data in the long-term CD, but the more detailed consultation on Southern Water done well, local water done well, will be coming to council at the end of April, beginning of May. There'll be some information that you'll be privy to. The reports I've just seen the draft reports. They've gone off to legal for review, which will be put before councils, which will have the financials as they are now, and the information, the pros and cons of 3 options. But they are the options that have been carried forward into the May consultation of the local water done well. I mean, the only 2 options we're consulting on in the CD is standalone in-house business unit, or a CCO of some description. The more detailed consultation will be in
Just in terms of the timing, the imbalances.
It is really unfortunate.
I've just got a suggestion. I think that so we just had the conversation we've had, we probably shouldn't withdraw the agenda item. We should just take away recommendations of B and C. And receive the paper, because then we have the conversation about what comes next. Otherwise,
We've still taken it.
Yeah.
So then skipping to the end of that, so you're just saying that the recommendation.
Well, receive the report and note that that since the report being presented, Timaru District have withdrawn. Yeah. That's why it's on the minutes, plus the conversation which then becomes relevant. Otherwise, it doesn't fit anywhere because you didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about it.
And I don't know, this council has never not talked about anything.
Yeah.
So then, have you got that, Sarah?
That's it.
In the home of talking.
Oh, wait, sorry. Okay, so you've got that. then,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So do I have a mover and a seconder for? Okay, so we've got Toma and Sally. Thanks.
You.
No,
Don't you just
Slow.
look back
Sorry.
at the table.
all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Where's Rob? Okay.
No, I'll just note too, we have received apologies from the Maniatoto Community Board Chair, Rob. He's not able to attend today. Do you want to note an apology for him? We have a slot for him. We can say,
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Right, item number 25.4.5, page 82, managing unreasonable complaint contact. And we have Alex and David.
Kia ora. For those of you who sit on community boards, you'll have seen this already, and for our members, this is the 5th time with this one. We'll kind of race through it. If we can jump to slide 2, right? So we've got a complaints policy in place already. That's how we deal with the majority of complaints that come into council, and that really sets a foundation of reducing.
Know what you really think, come on.
Foundation of reducing frustration, and then from there we are processing the complaints through the system, and it's a piece of work that's been going on for quite some time that David can give you some detail on if you need it. And the size of the arrows in this probably stolen diagram of mine is designed to show you how many customers we'd expect to see in each category. So as you can see, as we move up through the process, it gets smaller and smaller. And then to the very left, we've got a little tiny arrow marked UCC, and that stands for unreasonable complainant conduct. And that's what the policy we're asking you to pass today covers. So it is an extreme minority, but it is situations where the behaviour of a complainant is causing a health, safety or wellbeing issue for staff, or it's impacting on our ability to use our resources effectively. And if you jump to the next slide 1, that's what this slide is designed to show you. Defining unreasonable conduct requires it to be conduct by a person that, because of its nature or frequency, it raises substantial health, safety, resource or equity issues for us as a council. And jumping 2 slides ahead, the categories that covers are unreasonable persistence, unreasonable demands, unreasonable lack of cooperation, unreasonable arguments, and unreasonable behaviours. We've given you quite a few examples of those in the reports. So what the policy would do is to put a consequence on each of those categories that's designed to limit the difficulties that behaviour is causing, whilst keeping as much access to counsel open as possible. So someone might have an unreasonable argument with us about a reserve, for instance, but they still have access to report that their silver is overflowed, what's happening to their rates. We use the minimum required controls to effectively manage the behaviour. The next two slides are covering the principles from the Ombudsman. We don't really need to go into that detail. I guess the most important note I've got in there for you is that this policy can't ever be used punitively or as a punishment. It's only ever used to maintain access to other services and limit the behaviour. Without it, the strongest tool we have is trespass, which, as you all know, is a very, very blunt instrument. The process requires us, like if you can go to slide 10, it says managed customer process. This is the process as laid out by the Ombudsman. So it requires that we identify the early warning signs and make sure staff are aware of those to put in a control at the first possible opportunity before a behaviour escalates. That we provide warning letters and give customers time to manage or change their behaviour, that we give them notifications, that we make sure all staff and yourselves are aware when somebody is within this process, so we're not continuing to engage, and that we review them at specific times. And we do have one more slide there for you, just on the next one here. Just to note that there is support for you all as well if you are the subject of the unreasonable conduct. Our formal channel there is Lou, Peter and the Mayor, but I'm sure there are informal networks as well.
An ultra.
I think that's all from me.
Good update.
I'd just add a couple of words on there too, Alex. I think one of the conversations we've had around this table over the last 2 years in particular, and I guess it's our community, goes through different pressures. We are seeing different levels of aggression out there. And sure, I guess until sort of recently, we have had informal ways of dealing with complaints. And so what we've sort of done here, the complaints policy as a procedure we already had just sort of not formalised, so that is in the report. And it's an operational sort of matter approved by the CEO. This one is for us to take a tactical and fair view when it comes to people who so what I was saying, what the report says, causing more sort of time and demand on staff, really around the health and safety piece, and making sure that we have a fair approach ourselves in dealing with this kind of behaviour, and taking it through the right measures to keep both our community staff and yourself safe as well. So we thought it was good that this part of the policy came across this table to be approved, so we're on the same page.
Right, anyone got any questions?
Is there any region that's got more complaints in it than others, or is it a growing trend?
So it's a growing trend. I mean, throughout New Zealand, definitely the further north you get, if I talk to my counterparts further up north, there are libraries, they have security guards running through them, for example. So, we're not at that point, but, there is different trends throughout the country. And I think just with us making sure that we have the tools, we probably don't have, too many people that we would even use this tools just now. At least if we did need to use it, we would have it done. So, yeah.
Right, that's work. Any other questions? No. Okay, so the recommendations are that A, we receive the report and accept the level of significance, and B, adopt the managing unreasonable complaint conduct policy. Can I have a mover? Thanks, Lindy and Sarah seconder. All those in favour? Against? Carry. Thank you.
As we now move to item 25.4.6, page 116, which is the draft 3-year internal audit plan. Saskia.
Good afternoon, councillors. So you have in front of you a pretty straightforward paper here. Internal audits are really quite a critical part of our risk management practice, and it helps us really focus on areas of risk into the business and do a bit of a deep dive. You'll see what in front of you is heavily financially focused, especially the first three proposed reviews. So operational finance review, so looking at our financial acumen across the business, capital expenditure review that has been raised at this table in terms of how we track against our budget, and then heading into the following financial year, a focus on fraud. You'll recall, if you cast your minds back to when we had our workshop session with Bruce Robinson, a lot of these topics actually come directly from this table. So what I'm asking today is for your approval to go forth. And if you approve this today, we plan to crack on with this and start post LTP adoption, so July. With the first one, the idea is we'll take the recommendations from that and integrate them into the 27 LTP. Any questions?
Questions from anyone on that? I note that it has been through audit and risk and recommended by our independent chair, and also that this does indicate best practice, I guess, for organisations of this size, especially when we are spending public money, to making sure that all our T's are crossed and I's dotted, and having an additional set of eyes over and as an internal audit process.
And that gives
certainly prudent.
That gives me some confidence that how it got to where it got to says that, and you have to know something really special here today to try and change it.
Yeah.
It's like that ask when I can't remember the name of it, the local government New Zealand audit on us.
Do you mean Council Map, which is now called Te Koroa?
Te Koroa. Yeah, so that will actually it's going to kick off soon in terms of some of the literature we're getting and the requests from us. But in fairness for yourselves, you'll start probably seeing that in that sort of July, August, September, they'll be on site where they'll want to be speaking, but we can probably start sharing the indicative program with you shortly.
I could email that out to you guys shortly. We have received sort of a timeline from them, so I'll put that out for you. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Recommendations, we received the report, note that the audit and risk have resolved to recommend the proposed 3-year internal audit program, and we approve the draft 3-year internal audit program. All right. Martin's happy to move, Ian's happy to second. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And Saskia is going to remain there for our organisational business plan audit 2.
And I'm hoping we've got Christina online.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Yeah, she's right across this, so she can talk about it in a bit of detail than I can. Over to Christina.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Keep talking.
Yep, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
You want the highest one?
We can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Technical difficulty. Click the right button. So this report is for the organisational business plan quarterly report for the period of October through to December 2024. I take the paper as read, and is there any questions?
Questions on that? Is there anything that people wanted to go?
Well, I suppose the obvious thing is that
quite a lot there.
There's a lot there,
Yeah.
but the real question is how are we looking to actually physically do it? Because that's always the biggest worry with everything that's happening in this organisation. You know, the staff are being torn every which way but loose.
I guess, is there something that you want to highlight, Christina, that is significantly behind target that there is an explanation for, or a reason why that target might not be met that we should be aware of now?
I guess when looking through it, when you're looking at the performance measures, you can see the ones that I've highlighted in red are the ones that we're not meeting target on, and for the ones that are not achieved, I guess we're looking at the resource consents and building consents are probably of particular interest to you all, and that's due to resourcing challenges throughout the year and fluctuating workload.
I guess on that one, I had a question around the environmental services, because this is something that we probably want to highlight to our community. If there is the ability to change it, is the total amount of waste to landfill per rateable property, which is currently increased by 29 kilos per rateable property from 2023-24 to 24-25 for the second quarter. Obviously, if we would like to get back on track for that, maybe we need to put some effort into communicating so that people are aware that that we're not doing as well as we could be.
Yes, certainly I can pass that on to the business unit.
Thank you. Resource consenting, with our increase in resources that have come online in the last little while, do we anticipate seeing that improve?
That's probably a question for Louise van der Voort if she's there.
She is. She's just
She's
ready to go. Yes, yes is the short answer. Wonderful. Yeah. Are there any other things there that people want to highlight, recognising we're in quarter two, but that might be the time to highlight something if we're not going to make it?
So I suppose, sorry, the question I might say is what can we as elected members do to help? Is there anything we aren't doing, could be doing, should be doing? And don't be afraid to tell us.
I'll pass it on to the business unit as well, especially for that one that you've just highlighted there for the landfill. And maybe they could come up with some inventive communication and certainly take you up on your offer.
Education. I guess the point of it is a lot of these are annual measures, so we will bring that data in when we do the annual measure, i.e. the survey or whatever. Because this is quite a lot there. We could potentially strip the annual measures out and just only include those measures that we test quarterly, because you screed through quite a lot of this, but most of it we only test once every year. I mean, it's something we can do. We can think about it going into the LTP. But there are some good things to track, like regulatory consents, the regulatory environment, building consents, resource consents. Those types of things are always something that's useful to track, because at the end of the year, you don't want to be surprised to go, how is it that building control is only achieving 87%? I wasn't aware of that. This is why these reports come in, and you'll probably be getting that from builders, contractors and developers, so on and so on.
I don't think it is important for us to see these and be across.
Yeah, definitely.
Across the numbers at each quarter, because at the end, when we go, oh, we were supposed to be at 80% and we're at 25, it's a bit late to do something about it then. Lindley, did you have a?
I'm just thinking about thriving economy satisfaction of elected members. I think
that's something we can do something about, isn't it?
I think
Yeah,
it's
right.
been really affected by disinformation out there that is affecting us all as elected members, and that's kind of out of our control, isn't it? Sort of.
Something we cause it.
And I guess that's the reality is our public's expectations of what they see and hear from councils are increasing. And we're seeing that across a number of councils, different facilities, the different things that we're responsible. Our neighbours are certainly seeing it. People are more interested. That's what we want to encourage. But we want to make sure that they are getting the facts, informed opinions. Ideally.
Good luck.
Right. Any other questions on any of those? Nothing else you wanted to add, Christina?
No, nothing more from me.
Perfect. Recommendation is that the report be received. Thank you, Sarah and Nigel. Oh, he was looking at me and he raised his eyebrow. All those in favour? Just the one.
He just woke up.
I was just going to say, that was him nodding off.
Carried.
It's good, so it's sleeping.
And in the meantime, right, we are now moving to page. How did you adopt that?
It's alive.
Kinley woke up. 145. Order of candidate names on voting papers for the 2025 triennial council elections. This is your paper. Hang on.
First, just let anybody know, Ali, you can be in a different category.
Yeah.
I'd like to go up. That's cool.
Afternoon,
Do
everyone.
this every 3 years. Randy's best way of doing it.
Hey, you should be at the top if it's alphabetical.
Because my last name begins with M, which is a lot longer.
Yeah, but yeah.
The envelope, you know, the alphabet.
Probably a lot of people are quite happy with that.
I feel like Sarah and I might have something to say about that order.
Wayne, hurry up and
There you go.
shut this rattle up, Wayne, quickly.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
You won't change that
Oh dear.
much. See, that's woken up.
anyways, I'll take this paper as read. And so yeah, for the upcoming election, we're proposing that names are in random order. I don't know if you call it anecdotally or it's actually been proven that statistically things in alphabetical order, the ones higher on the list
Do as well.
do much better.
Do they?
They do.
Shit, hang on.
Because some people go, oh, I don't know who to vote for. So they'll go, there wasn't that one, and that one. Or whatever.
That's the choice, they probably voted for the better people.
It's a tough act on some of these lists, isn't it?
So we're asking for it to be in random order, where all of the various orders that they possibly could be in are looked at and then put on the voting paper. So this order and then that order and then that order, like that.
Same number of each.
So they're all random.
Everyone's random, but some of them will be the same.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many combinations you can have.
Yes, some will be the same, but they're all in the different combinations.
And there'll be equal amounts of
Yeah.
same.
Of randomness.
Yes.
Yes.
You'll appear at the top of it.
Yeah.
And that's the way that we've done it for the last.
Certainly the last two that I know of, I think it's probably been that way for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
Has it been that way for a while, Martin?
Been that way for a while. Thank you.
Yeah.
We did do alphabetical for a long time.
Yeah.
Because well, there wasn't enough information as to why, and it was just the easy way to do it. And actually the cost was actually what drove it. To generate it, to do it random had a cost, and it was like $10,000 type cost, something like that. But now that's gone, so that's where we made the change.
All right, happy to move that.
Thank you.
Neil, sorry, Stu's happy to second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
So, random names.
Gary.
random people.
The two most random.
I don't know. So, well, I don't know, not really.
I wasn't talking about you.
Right. Now move to the Mayor's report. What's she got to say? The past month and a half has been devastating for our community, with the loss of 6 lives on our local roads, as well as dozens of people directly and indirectly impacted. While this council are very pro-road safety, not every aspect can be accounted for when you're dealing with human error. My thoughts, and I know that of the rest of the council, are with the families and friends of those lost, and also with our outstanding first responders. Thank you all for the decision making undertaken at the last meeting, which I wasn't at. Some of the potential opportunities in front of us are generational in nature and may result in council operating in a different way to what it was set up as in 1989. There is a cost of opportunity and a cost to not take an opportunity, so I am pleased to see us keep the conversation alive to better work out where the benefits could lie for our district. I've continued open dialogue with Sustainable Terrace, the Environmental Defence Society and Santana Minerals in relation to their fast track application for a mine at Bendigo. We are working hard to have our council in the best position to respond to the application when it is lodged with the fast track process. This will be no small piece of work conducted under an extremely tight time frame. The monthly Business South Central Otago meeting was well attended this month, followed by a catch up at Oliver's and Clyde. It is promising to see a bit of positivity in the retail and hospitality sector, although this is being dampened slightly by a bit of a downturn in some other industries. I welcome 20 new Kiwis to receive their citizenship certificates, which is always a great day, though I don't know if the woman who has already been here for 65 years would be classed as a new Kiwi. It's always a very special day for the citizens as well as their friends and family, and I love reading the stories, even though some of them come from extremely hard to pronounce towns. Together with VCB Chair Jaden, I participated in a fundraiser for the Child Cancer Foundation. Donated sausages were snapped up for $3 a piece, and some extremely generous locals popping their change and more than change in the buckets was gratefully received for a very worthy cause. I'm waiting to the end of the month to find out how I went in the inaugural mayoral challenge to raise the most money. I was lucky enough to be invited as a guest speaker at BLAST in Alexandra. BLAST stands for Blue Light Adventure Skills and Training, and I was thrilled to bring this to Alex 10 years ago with Ben Sanders, who was then part of the Defence Force. It was particularly special to see BLAST is now run by Nathan and Leah, who participated in the first BLAST as Year 9s and are now working in our local community and giving back to this awesome program. The overwhelming feedback was that breakfast was the best part, and I was stoked to see a great turnout, even though the kids didn't have school that day. Kudos to them for getting out of bed. I think they may have been scared of the punishment from Nathan if they were no-shows, skills that I'm sure he did pick up from Ben Sanders. I opened the Innovations in Health Psychology Conference in Clyde, which welcomes 70 international psychiatrists, psychologists and others to Clyde for the week. The calibre of these people was awe-inspiring and amazing to be hosting guests from America, the UK, Belgium, Denmark, Germany and a token Aussie, to name a few. I have no doubt they will have had now, by the time we're reading this, a wonderful time here, and perhaps we can retain a couple of them to bolster our mental health offerings locally. They certainly enthusiastically received that suggestion. Finally, I know a number of you have seen a lot of pretty awful comments going around on social media lately about this council, our capabilities, our decision making and our pedigree. I say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for putting up your hand to turn up continually for your community. Thank you for the countless hours which often go without thanks. Thank you for the missed family events because you are representing our area, and the lower paycheck because your actual job, you've had to take 3 days off to attend local council meetings. Our community will have the opportunity to change this council come October. I hope all the potential candidates haven't been put off by what they see online. This is a really great role. Finally, LTP is coming up fast, and this is a huge piece of work for both elected members and the staff. So I leave you all with some words from Mayor Wayne Brown. If you don't like where the money's going, tell us. If you do like it, tell us. If you just want to complain, at least make it official. We're rolling into the submission period. And you may have seen coming through, if it's flashed up on your computer, that obviously we spoke about it briefly with Julie, that Queenstown are intending to use emergency powers to discharge up to 12,000 cubics of treated septic water into the Shotover and therefore the Kauvara. We are currently working on a press release to note that we are aware of that and to reassure our community about any implications or no implications, especially for our drinking water supplies. So we will have something to go ready for that by the end of today. That's my report. I'm happy to move we receive it. Neil's happy to second that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carries. Now moving to the governance report. On page 150, we have got there the council status updates as well as the museum report. One thing I wanted to note was the Dunstan Park subdivision stage 4. Part of the temporary fencing has come down and the permanent fencing going up, and with the bit of rain that we've had, the grass is growing and it's really looking quite top notch in there, which is pleasing to see. Has anybody else got anything that they wanted to add on that status, or?
Just in the status reports, the Alexandra Airport runway resurfacing, I noticed that the contract's been awarded to HEB Construction, which is a surprise to me that someone like them are into reseals, but hey, it's good to see it's happening.
Quite an innovative product they're using.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Hadn't caught up in that part of it, but yeah, that's it's good to see that's finally moving forward.
Great. Has it been completed?
No, it's starting to done.
That? Yeah. I thought it would. Are they just doing some work up there at the moment to get it ready? There's a lot of truck movements. Yeah. Okay, so they're working on getting it ready and then we'll seal it.
Yeah.
Actually, better hurry up, the window's running out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, that's a end of month, so they might have started, they had prep work start last week now, so could be underway by the end of this week.
Well, that could happen.
Yeah.
Silly day.
Right. So there are no other questions. I'm happy to move that report be received. Stu's happy to sit in that. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Page 211, we have our community board and committee minutes. Anybody got anything to add to any of those? No. In which case, is someone happy to move those? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sally. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Our date for the next meeting is the 28th of March. Thank you, mate. It's on the piece of paper. I didn't even have to find it. And now for the reasons.
I did notice.
I only have to get told 5 times.
It's not in the box.
Very
Right,
helpful.
though. I looked in the right. For the reasons outlined, we'll move to a resolution to exclude the public, and then we will take a short recess for. Lunch won't be here yet, is it?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll take a short recess now, and we will be back at 1:05. Oh, sorry, mover, Stu, are you happy to move that we're going to public excluded? Ian's happy to second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Very much.